Five Nights at Freddy's, a horror game series that we're all familiar with, or at least I would hope so. Well known for its creepy atmosphere and cringy fans. Oh, and I forgot to mention a weird story that makes absolutely zero sense. Last time I kept up with it, it basically went back on itself and said all the first few games were some freak dream or something. I feel like the story was thought after all these crazy conspiracies came out, Matt Pat, and you thought QAnon was whack. So yeah, over time these games have fallen pretty far. However, the horror in the first few games is actually pretty good, and that brings us to the topic of today's video, a deep look into the horror of these games and what exactly makes them so great. Now I should mention I will not be discussing the overarching story, and it is cringe and I am a based red pill gamer. All goofs and gaffs out of the way, the story itself is not that creepy. The isolated bits in each game is. In retrospect, it would appear that Scott focused less on the spooky, scary stuff and began giving into the fandom, who, even after the first game, were putting together crazy theories. Which happens to many games like Hello Neighbor and Undertale, just to name a few. Nevertheless, we'll be ignoring these rabid fan bases today, or tonight, whenever you're watching this. We'll be going over the great horror aspects of the FNAF series. In addition, we'll also go over the bad parts too, but that'll be later on. Starting with the first game of the series, and taking a look at its visuals, they're quite stunning. The lighting adds a sense of cold lifelessness, and the props in each room add faint hints of life, with bits of clutter in the restaurant making it look like a real place that people work in and come in and out of every day. Let's not forget about these bad boys, the main cast of characters: Fredbear, Bonnie, which by the way Scott said that he's had nightmares about when he was developing the game, Chica, and Foxy. It's not usually uncommon that a chain of restaurants to have mascots. However, some of them can be incredibly creepy. Chocolatiez is one of the predominant figures when it comes to creepy robot mascots. It also doesn't help that they look like they've been ran through the ringer a few times. I mean, take a look at them. However, FNAF takes this to a different level. It's one thing to see these animatronics during the day, it's another to see them at night, the dark hallways with a little bit of light revealing the animatronics. They're not always in the center of frame. Sometimes they appear hidden. Like in the case with Bonnie, who in the hallway you can barely see, and Freddy you can only view his eyes. And even Chica is somebody who goes completely off camera into the kitchen, whereby you can only hear her moving pots and pans around. Which of course brings us on to our next topic, audio. Sound can trigger all sorts of responses, an example being how a lower note can add a heavy feel to a song, or a higher note can add more energy to a song. These ideas can be applied to horror as well. I recommend you watch this video by Scruffy. He goes into more detail about the sound in the game and how it adds to the horror. With that out of the way, in FNAF, you have ambient sounds and active sounds, with the latter being stuff like, and active sounds being like. Ambient sound is key to its setting. Let's take this video of me spinning around the face of camera as an example. I'll overlay two different songs in the video. The first one, a heavy thrasher metal song, which makes the scene more intense, while the second song is more of a chill vibe. Sound can add meaning to what's happening, like when the ambient sound of a music box is playing over the buzzing of the fan creates a chaotic feeling and prevents you from being able to hear active sounds, like footsteps and the laughter that Freddy makes. These are used to tell what's going on without needing to look around. As I stated before, pots and pans being knocked over is a sign that Chica's in the kitchen, and as I even said before, laughing is a representation that Freddy is moving and so on and so forth. Using these, you can track each of the animatronics without being on the camera. The sound mixed with the creepy visuals adds a never-ending suspension. Not to mention how slowly throughout the night the animatronics become more and more aggressive. Which brings us on to our next topic, the gameplay. You are backed into a small room with a limited field of view. This adds a sense of entrapment. The office itself is cramped, with 2 opposing doors and windows. You have to watch the animatronics on the cameras, and when they get to your door, you close it to stop them, which of course, this drains your power, and when you run out of power, this happens. You also have lights by the doors to view the doorway and a little bit outside of the window, to see if they are still outside of your door. Some animatronics even peer through the window. Creepy, huh? You cannot see them on the cameras when they're outside of your door, as there's a convenient blind spot in the cameras right where the door is. So if you can't find one of them, it's probably found you. No, 2 out of the 5 require you to watch them on cameras. Foxy and Freddy. Both of them need you to view them on the cameras to stop them. If Freddy gets to your door, you're done for. On the other hand, Foxy will run at you if you do not look at him, while the others require you to simply close the door to stop their attacks. So you have to manage attacks from a lot of different fronts. However, after the 4th night, the gameplay loop becomes one of the worst parts about the first game. After a while, it's no longer about the horror, and it's more about beating the game. However, that tense feeling never goes away, especially if it's your first time playing. Of course, there are a lot of good parts and bad parts about this game's horror. The good parts are the atmosphere, sound design, and gameplay. However, what really ruins this game is the story, the abuse of the jump scares, and the fandom. Oh, and I forgot to include the aforementioned boring gameplay loop. Also, why does the whole building run out of power? Is it ran by a generator? I would understand if it's a rundown building, but it's clearly not. As I've said in another video, pacing is key in horror. Knowing how to draw people in and hook them is pretty difficult. I mean, look at the new Resident Evil games. They basically went from creepy, slow thriller horrors to action shooters. With that being said, with Scott having just a crew of him, himself, and he, I believe that it fares pretty well with that in mind. In closing, I don't hate these games. I love the horror aspects of each one of them, and I'll be looking into the other games and highlighting their horror as well in other videos. These games are pretty alright horror games, even if an army of cringy, edgy teens ruin their stories. Also, no, I'm not touching the books.